Mike Cook, thank you so much for meeting up with me. So, MBA graduate.
I am.
Yep. And you're now currently the partner of GBS Financial Services here in Canada.
Yes, I am.
Just to kick things off, because the way I've been talking to people at start is just try and get to know them a little bit. So, would you be able to say what your favorite hobby is, your favorite food, and your favorite movie?
My favorite hobby is sailing,
Nice.
which I learned in New Zealand.
Yep.
Because it's one of the national sports there.
Yeah.
My favorite food is a tough one. It's probably Indian.
Oh, nice.
And my favorite movie? Sorry, what was the third one?
Yeah, favorite movie. Yeah.
A little movie by Jonathan Sayles many years ago called Matawan, Matewan.
I never heard of it.
About a coal mining town in the Appalachians, and it's about social strife and social disorder, and
All that good stuff.
there's a great fight at the end between the man and the people.
Awesome. Thank you. So, going back to your university days, so you studied a Bachelor of Science?
Yeah, I screwed up university like a lot of people.
Okay. How?
I ended up going to university. I grew up in Scotland, so I went to university in Glasgow. I studied sciences, mostly chemistry, because my A levels I'd done well in chemistry, not knowing the difference between what university chemistry and high school chemistry was. I ended up sitting the 101 chemistry exam 3 times before I actually passed it.
Wow.
So I have this sort of, and I really had very little focus as to why I was going to university, other than it was decided I should go to university.
Yeah.
And so I think my transcript is probably about a 52 average, because I spent more time in the snooker hall. And I came out of school in the early 80s into a recession and ended up getting kind of contract work. But I'd been born in Canada, and so I always had a Canadian passport.
Yeah.
And when the contract work ran dry and they had an 8-month gap between contracts for me, I bought an 8-month return ticket to Canada.
Yeah.
So I'm this guy who grew up in the UK,
Yeah.
but I'm a Canadian citizen. And I
Okay.
landed in Canada for the first time I was 21 at the time when I got here.
So you'd born in Canada, but you hadn't actually
I
lived there.
left Canada when I was 4.
Oh, wow.
I had no
Okay.
memories of Canada.
Yeah.
And so I land here, and it was a big turning point in my life, because I'm kind of lost. I'd spent 3 years studying sciences for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
And I get here, and instantly I felt Canadian.
Wow.
It was like a homecoming. It's like,
Yeah.
I didn't feel comfortable there. I was always meant to be here.
Meant to be here.
And that's when ambition and focus came in, and I got a real job, and I decided that my 52 average Bachelor of Science wasn't going to cut it in business. And
Yeah.
so I worked for a couple of years, went back, did my MBA, got a significantly upgraded transcript. And I was fortunate enough to go to a school that did a case study competition, and I was good enough to get on the team. And in case studies in business school, it's essentially consulting on steroids.
Yeah. Okay.
You're given a case, you've
Yeah.
got to analyze it, you've got to come up with recommendations, and you do all this in a
Yeah.
PowerPoint presentation in 3 hours.
In a very short time frame.
And it was like adrenaline. It was like,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
this is the kind of stuff I want to do for my career.
Yeah.
And so I only looked at consulting companies after I graduated, and because I'd done really well in my MBA, I basically have a straight A transcript. I got an offer from Anderson's back in the day,
Okay.
Anderson Consulting.
And that was your first role.
That was my first role.
Would you be able to, I suppose, talk a bit through that first role? And
It was great.
Yeah.
I joined a small practice in Ottawa. It was a 12-person practice that over my first 5 years with it grew from 12 people to 500.
Wow.
And part of that was an acquisition, which brought in new leadership with a different mindset.
Who was the acquisition with?
It was a little tiny local company of
Okay.
about 150 people,
Yeah.
but they had very entrepreneurial partners. And because I'd kind of screwed up my bachelor's, and I'd come at my career with a sort of 3-4 year delay, I was a little more mature than most folks that had a little bit more life experience. And I had a group of partners who were just incredibly good mentors and coaches who saw that I had a few, a little more maturity and talent than the other guy, and I felt like I was taken under their wing. And they kind of brought you into the club to say, no, this is how the business works. This is what stewardship is of a practice and how to grow it.
Did you seek out those mentors yourself, or were they assigned to you, or was it a bit of both?
No. It's a topic I talk to a lot of the more junior consultants here about, is that having a mentor assigned is almost like a personal failure. It's not a tick box to get ahead.
Yeah.
I sought out mentors because I saw partners who did stuff that I wanted to do. And I very openly, and I don't know where I got this kind of brass neck, but I just go up to them and say, so I was sitting there taking notes while you were with this client, and I saw how you interact. How'd you do that?
Yeah.
So it came from a strangely wholesome place. Is I sought out mentors who did things that I didn't know how to do, and asked them to teach me. And
that's awesome.
It turns out that that's really what mentorship is about. Getting a mentor so you can sort of show off all the good things that you did in the hope that they're going to drag you through is frankly missing the point. If you seek out a mentor who can actually teach you something and take the time and help grow you and make you a better consultant, your career takes care of itself.
Yeah. And definitely, I think it's also like, because I've sought out a few mentors like myself, and it's exactly a reflection of this person has some ability or some traits that I want in myself.
Yeah.
And it's about, I suppose, having the humbleness to just say, like, I need a mentor at this stage of my life if I'm going to progress forward at the rate that I want to.
And it was, Anderson's was a great place to start. A funny story, one of my first engagements when I started with them, they sent me down to Dallas to work on a firm-wide project.
Yeah.
So I was living in Ottawa, and I was flying to Dallas every week. And so I'm sitting in the airport bar at Dallas-Fort Worth, and there's another young guy with me. And we're complaining about the partners, saying, oh my God, they don't pay us enough money, and all the partners take all the profit, and they're the owners of the company. When it turns out the guy sitting next to us was a partner at Anderson's.
Oh, no.
and he was a big old Southern boy, and he just looks to us and says, you almost got it right, guys. I grew up poor, and I don't like it, and I have all the money now. But I'm not the owner. I'm just looking after the company until you guys are ready to take it over. And it was the most humbling moment early in a career to say, here's a guy who we thought had it all.
Yeah.
And his sole driving force was that it ain't for me. I'm just looking after it until you guys are ready to come along and take care of it.
Until he can hand over the
reins. And it was that notion of stewardship, not ownership or our hierarchy or patriarchy or anything. Yeah. I'm just taking care of it.
Yeah.
That was a really good lesson for me to learn early in life, because that's how you get healthy companies. I'm just taking care of it, and I got to get you ready to take care of it so I can move on to my next thing.
That's awesome. After that, would you be able to, I suppose, step through that first role, I suppose, and touch on the roles that you took along the way to joining IBM?
Between Anderson's and IBM? Well, at Anderson's, I was blessed with this awesome career in that because we went through crazy growth, 12 people to 500, there was always an opportunity if you're willing to step into it.
Yeah.
And I got the chance, it sounds crazy now, and I don't mean to kind of brag, but when I was a senior consultant, I sold my first $2 million project. That was all profit.
Yeah.
And the nature of it. And then what it was, I sold them a methodology and a training program to the Defense Department. And the training program was for 6 months. I toured the country training hundreds of military and civilian personnel on how to manage IT projects.
Yeah.
So, and of course, when they got their project money to go into a project, they called me.
Yeah.
Because I'd impressed them with teaching them how to manage projects. That led into a $15 million deal, a $50 million deal, a $100 million deal.
Yeah.
when I was a band-aid.
Yeah.
You know, and when I think back, it was just a crazy set of circumstances that led into that.
Yeah.
And when I try and piece it apart, I think I was incredibly lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about that now, it was, you know, you're in Canada, so you got to talk ice hockey.
Yeah, yeah.
The winningest ice hockey coach in Canadian history is a guy called Scotty Bowman. And when they asked him, why did you keep winning? He said, I was lucky.
Yeah.
But luck is when opportunity meets preparedness.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize now that I had a lot of opportunity. And because I had great mentors and coaches and supporters,
You're ready to take it.
I was prepared to take it.
Yeah.
I also didn't have a fixed path. I didn't join saying I'm going to be this kind of consultant.
Yeah.
I had an idea of the kind of work I wanted to do. But part of being a consultant is you can have those visions, but what the market's going to give you,
You never know.
you really never know.
Yeah.
And so if you have too fixed a point of view is, I'm going to be a data scientist working on agricultural problems and only agricultural problems, you might find that that's not going to be the greatest thing for your career.
Mm-hmm.
Yet if you try and be a data scientist, or no, I'm going to be a coder, no, I'm going to be a project manager, you're going to have the same issue. It's a very delicate balance of when to say yes and when to say no. But generally, if an opportunity is good, it's big, it's relevant to clients, which I always use as my benchmark, is if this is a market for this amongst a lot of clients, it must be good. And what happened is I have sort of two resumes that I talk to people about. Is I started in government, I went to healthcare, I went to the military, I went to social services, I went to public health, I went to telco, I went to banking. And it sounds like the craziest resume in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
If I say it another way, it's saying I was lucky enough to run big, complex business transformations.
Yeah.
Where the smallest one was 50 million, the biggest one was 225 million.
Yeah.
I have a very coherent resume.
Yeah.
And that was a function of opportunity and preparedness. The opportunity is always going to be there. Are you going to be ready to take it? Or are you going to say, no, I don't want that one? And,
So you sort of
and there's
go
no
with the flow.
science to it. It's an art, and it's when you need your coaches, and it's when you need your mentors to say, I need to bounce this off you. I've been offered this. What do you think?
Yeah. Should I go for it?
Someone who's got another 10 years experience on you than you have. Or the other part is, it's an awesome opportunity. I don't know if I'm good enough. And sometimes you just need to hear guys, of course you are.
Yeah, yeah.
You need to, if you find yourself making those decisions on your own, without the benefit of someone's 10, 20, 30 years experience, you're kind of missing a big opportunity. So,
That's
had a great career there.
yeah.
I chose to leave it to go and chase the dot-com dream in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like I was saying to you earlier about it, doing a Java startup.
Yeah.
That ended up being 3 different startups in about a 5-year period.
Wow.
And I got it out of my system.
Yeah. You had the startup.
And I batted about 500.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just to say, I lost a ton of money on the first one.
Yeah.
I got it mostly back on the second one, and the third one was pretty much a tie, in that it got knocked down by the recession in 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
And so I ended up walking away with a year's severance because it was a startup within a bigger company.
Awesome.
And I had a summer off, and I said, well, that was fun. Let's go back to being a consultant.
Yeah,
And that's when I joined Deloitte.
Deloitte. So how long were you at Deloitte?
About
for?
5 years.
5 years. And what was what role did you come in as?
Deloitte back then in 2002, 2003 was just starting to grow their technology practice.
Okay.
They had largely been a consulting advisory practice.
Yeah, a general. Yeah.
So I was the third partner in the Canadian technology practice. And
Awesome.
Kind of took care of government. And back then, very different now. The Deloitte of 15 years ago is quite different from what it's become now. We were just at the beginning of doing technical work.
Yeah.
But the deals that we got to play with were a lot smaller than what IBM got to play with or what Anderson's got to
Yeah,
play
yeah.
with. And so I love the people, great culture, wonderful
But it
bunch
wasn't.
of guys to hang with. But I realized after about 4 years, I hadn't put a highlight clip onto my, I don't know if it's we, but I keep a highlight clip in my head of the things I'm really proud of in my career.
And you hadn't had one yet.
I didn't have one.
Yeah.
You know, I hadn't turned on a big system. I hadn't sold a big deal. I
Yeah.
hadn't fixed a big problem. I'd written a lot of deeply meaningful strategy reports and done a few small things.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It didn't
Didn't
feel
quite meet
like
the
my
mark.
personal brand was there.
Yeah. Fair
And that's
enough.
when I came to IBM,
And that was 8 years ago?
2007.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I am now in my 12th year.
12th
or
year.
49th quarter, as we like to think of it at IBM. So, yeah.
And did you come in what role?
I came in as a partner.
Yeah.
I was made a lead account partner of 2 of the banks here.
Okay. Here
One
in
of the-
Toronto?
Yeah, one of the great things that happened at Deloitte is because we were such a small group,
Yeah.
I ended up being the quality partner for the partner who was doing my job in banking.
Okay.
And so I got exposed to banking without being banking.
Uh-huh.
And
Was this your first, I suppose,
yeah,
exposure to banking?
I'd been in public sector
Yep.
for most
Okay.
of my 15 years.
It's exciting.
And I found a commonality, again, between banking and public sector.
Yeah.
They're the 2 largest spenders on technology. They're the 2 largest spenders on consultants in technology. And the problems they solve are big ones with technology. So, kind of staying true to my brand is
Yeah.
I like big and ugly, and I like big and ugly in tech.
Sticking to your resume
So
as well.
that was what I offered banking. At the time, I frankly knew very little about the business processes of banking, but I knew how to move things from A to B, and I understood technology. And if you're going to be a consultant, being a quick study is part of the necessary makeup.
Yeah.
And I could fake it for a year until I actually understood banking.
So, after those first 2 years, how did you, I suppose, get to your position that you're in now, head of financial services in all of Canada?
It's funny, IBM changed my life. I can say that. I came in as a lead account partner. It's what I aspired to in life. The IBM brand is very powerful. And so at Deloitte, a good year for me was doing $3 or $4 million. My target for my first year was 15 million when I came to IBM, and I surpassed it. And so I'm now truly in the land of big and ugly, where I deserve to be, or wanted to be rather. And I had a very good 4-year run.
Yeah.
And that I took an account that was doing less than $1 million a year, and it became the largest account in Canada, doing $100 million a year.
Wow.
And I was happy with that at the time.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful boss who was reshaping her executive team, and she was talking to me about one opportunity, and it was more in a service line, helping them out. And then it was like a 180-degree turn, and she calls me up and says, I want you to run financial services starting Monday.
Wow.
And I go, okay.
Yeah.
And I'd always kind of been the kingmaker, not the king. I'd always been the guy who whispered to the boss, saying, with the benefit of not having to make the decision making,
Yeah.
you can give really clear advice.
Yeah.
And I'd made a lot of people successful over the years by being that sort of consigliere. You could whisper in the ear of the guy, have you considered this?
Yeah.
And I was kind of happy with that.
Yeah.
And
they wear the risk.
And I thought I was pretty good at that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the burden of actually being the boss and dealing with the decisions. So,
yeah, exactly.
and then all of a sudden I'm thrust into being the boss. And it was unexpected. And
But you took it.
I took it because I had an awesome boss, and she asked me to do it.
Yeah.
And so I was, well, of course, I'm not going to say no to Lisa. So.
Yeah.
And it was a turning point in my career.
Wow.
In that, I was now in a place doing something that I never thought I'd be doing. And it turns out I was doing it pretty well. Because when I took over in 2000, 11, we went on a tear. We ended up growing this practice about 40-odd% in 4 years.
Yeah.
And part of that was market and circumstance and a whole bunch of things. And a lot of it was I turned out to be pretty good at this thing.
Yeah.
Did that for 4 years. And along the way, I said to the leadership that I have a real desire to spend some time in New York. So it was kind of a three-headed thing that I was working at. And it's a shame to admit, but first and foremost is me and my family wanted to live in New York City. It's like one of our favorite cities.
The Big Apple.
We go there at least once, twice a year.
Yeah.
And the thought of living there for a couple of years was really attractive to all of us. So that was kind of first and foremost. The second thing was, if you're in Canada, or if you're in Perth, Australia, or if you're in Wellington, New Zealand, you have a different IBM experience than you do if you're in the mother house. Armonk is still our company headquarters. There's more executives per square inch in New York City than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And if you really want to understand how our company works,
You have to get some experience there.
you have to be there. Or at least that was my perception, and it bore out to be the truth.
Yeah.
Let me truly understand how IBM works. And the third one was pure ego, is saying, I'll be pretty successful in little old Toronto. Can I run with the bulls on Wall Street?
Yeah.
And I got a chance to play that out. So for 2 years I ran banking in New York.
Okay.
And it was a 2-year international assignment. And all 3 boxes got ticked off, and I got to come back here and go back to running financial services in Canada again.
Awesome. What would you say, I suppose, the most rewarding part about your current role is about running Financial Services Canada?
It's a cop-out, but I don't think you can say there's one thing. The one thing is it's a bunch of things. I find it incredibly rewarding to build a strategy that plays to the distinct IBM advantages and take that to market and claim our space. A lot of consulting business can just be, sorry, I'm going to back it up. By this time, I'm not a consultant by choice. It is part of who I am now at this point. I've done it for almost 30 years, so it's very hard.
It's ingrained within
to
you.
take it out of me.
Yeah.
But consulting is, at the end of the day, a battle of ideas. That there's clients who have problems. They are only coming to consultants because they can't fix it, and they're going to come to you if your ideas are better than anybody else's.
Yeah.
And that art of defining a strategy that uses the unfair advantages of your company, the fact that we have spent $30 billion in data, that we have 1,100 data scientists, finding a way to take those,
Advantages.
as I say, unfair advantages, because Anderson's doesn't have that and Deloitte doesn't have that. We have that.
Yeah.
And finding relevancy to client problems, and putting that in the marketplace and saying, I do this better than no one else.
Yeah.
There's a discipline to that, there's a focus to that I get really jacked about, that says, I don't have to be the best in SAP, because there's lots of guys who are good in it.
SAP,
and I don't want to be in that fight that's saying, I do it just as well as they do. No, I want to be in the category of one. And so building a strategy in kind of a turbulent time, like Mark Foster talks about right now, a low growth market that's digitally disrupted, stating that strategy that's going to win for your clients is fun. Executing on that strategy and building the team around it and rallying the skills around it to execute on that strategy is fun.
Yeah. Funner?
Getting the results is fun.
Yeah.
So when I came back, we didn't have a strategy and we were kind of flat as a business.
Yeah.
I just went through my business review with my boss and we were up 22% year to year. That's fun. It's a long-winded way of saying is that when you take all the parts of a consulting business and actually win in the marketplace, it's fun because it says, I've got the right strategy, I I have the right interests of my clients at heart. I've been able to pull together a really great team,
The right people.
who knows how to do this, and together you get the results of all that working.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I was to net it down, it's the fact that I get fun out of my ideas are better than yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's where that's the essence of being a good consultant, I think.
Awesome. When the day comes that you look back on your career, it might be careers now or in the future, what would be the one thing you'd be able to say that you did? It could be something that hasn't happened yet.
I think I'm doing it right now.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things when I came back in banking, and I've got to give you a simplified version of banking for your folks. Mm-hmm. Bankers do three things: they store money, mm-hmm. they invest money, and they move money. Mm-hmm. And that movement is generally called payments. Mm-hmm. So when you flash your debit card at a store and you pay for something, that is a payment. Yeah. And payments is going through a global transformation that's going largely from a batch system to a real-time system. And it's happening right now in Canada.
Wow.
And the Central Payment Agency is going to spend between $300 and $500 million rebuilding the payment networks. Yeah. But that's a drop in the bucket to what the banks will spend remediating all of their systems from batch to real time.
Yeah, yeah.
So while the actual change is going to be $300 to $500 million, the estimate of what banks will spend remediating to that is upwards of $2 billion.
Yeah, wow.
And so this is now a hot market. It's a non-discretionary spend. This change is happening. Yeah. And so we sat down a couple of years ago and said, well, how are we going to be different? And we had done a number of pieces of payments works at banks in a spotty manner. Payments is one of those things where it gets very little money spent on it. Yeah. Creates 35% of the profit of a bank. Mm-hmm. But it just is just a little sweetie shop that keeps running. Yeah. So you don't spend a lot of money on it. And once every 20 years you blow your brains out and spend everything. And we're now in that window. Yeah. We had been fortunate enough to do a number of little things, which when we put them all together, we realized we had about 200 people doing payments work in Canada. Mm-hmm. But we hadn't branded it that way. So last year, at the annual conference of the Central Agency Payments Canada that's driving this change, we came out with an incredible bang. You know, we had the biggest booth. We had all the keynotes. We were the title sponsor, and we announced the IBM Payment Center Canada. Mm-hmm. And within 6 months, IPCC was a branded name in the marketplace that our clients and our competitors were all using. Mm-hmm. That's led to us winning, well, not yet, but we hope to sign $150 million with Payments Canada to do one of the 3 streams that's being contracted. We've doubled our business in payments. It is the single largest group of payments professionals in IBM in the world right now. Wow. And it was presented at Mark's global operating team as this is an asset for the whole of the world. Yeah. And so when I get ahead of myself, and we live in a schizophrenic world where I'm just trying to deliver to my plan this quarter. Yeah. But this has the potential of being
blow up worldwide.
In Canada, it'll be $100 million business this year. Yeah. It could be $1 billion business globally within 2 years. Yeah, wow. And this is going to be very exciting. Yeah, and awesome. Scary at the same time. It's we created a beast. It's exceeded all of our local expectations. Yeah, and it seems to have global relevance now. Yeah. And so
that's exciting.
Out of little old Toronto, we've gone and created something that could go places.
Awesome. Is there anything that you'd wish you'd known when you'd first started your career? If you could talk to a younger version of yourself.
Oh, hell yes.
What would you tell yourself?
I would have told myself to have done better on my bachelor's degree, and I would never have gone and done a master's. Me taking a master's degree was remedial. I screwed up my bachelor's. I have a number of folks that came in as entry-level consultants that I mentor, and one out of two will say, well, I'm thinking of going back and doing my MBA, and I'm saying, why? Trust me, 2 years of working is far more valuable to you and your skills and your relevancy to the marketplace than going and studying for 2 years. Studying is just a poor proxy for actually doing. I don't think you get anything from that. One of the joys of a consulting career is that the experiences that we have in 12 years are equivalent to a 20, 25-year experience working at our clients.
Yeah.
Just because we get to move around and
So
do
much.
things.
Yeah.
So you're never going to replace 2 years of working experience with 2 years of education.
Yeah.
So I wish I had come into the business earlier. I think I've been lucky in that I had great mentors and coaches. For those of you who don't have mentors and coaches, that don't have someone looking after your career,
Yeah.
take it into your hands and make sure you get it.
Good advice.
And it's a self-moderating thing. If you see someone who can teach you something and you go out and reach out to them and they say no, well,
yeah.
Hopefully you're not going to use the audio transcript here, but they're dickheads.
Yeah.
You don't want their mentoring. 99% will say, of course.
Yeah.
Regardless of rank, regardless of level, because we all got to where we are.
By doing the same.
Because, and it may be after hours and it may be at lunchtime. I spent way too much of my youth sitting in a bar with managing partners, because that was the only time of day they had was, after 6:30, we'll go have a scotch and we'll talk.
Yeah.
And so you take those opportunities and as they come to you and you grab everything about that. I wouldn't have 5-year plans. I wouldn't have 4-year plans. I wouldn't have 3-year plans. I look back and I say, at best I could forecast what was going to happen in the next 18 months. So if you commit yourself to a 3-year plan, 4-year plan, 5-year plan, I think it'll lead to disappointment.
You come too rigid.
What we have in our industry is essentially if you do well and you keep busy and you continually grow, there's always going to be a market for you. One of the best pieces of advice I got from a managing partner is that when you hit that sort of Band-Aid level, manager level in the consulting speak, you become, there is the greatest dissonance between what we pay you, and I don't mean IBM, we the industry,
And
versus what clients will pay you.
Yeah.
And it's about $50,000 difference. And when I hit Band-Aid and I was getting offers that were a huge amount of money for me at the time, Dave Seibel, my managing partner, took me to the bar and explained to me the difference between income statement and balance sheet. And the income statement is the salary. They will pay you $50,000 more. Now you got to examine the reason why, and that's your balance sheet. They're paying you $50,000 more because of your experience here. That balance sheet continues to increase, and you can cash it in for an income statement at any time. And I followed the advice, and I stayed here, and sure enough, within 5 years, I'm earning way more than any of my peers who had gone off and taken the higher client salary.
Yeah.
Because that accelerated career, that exposure to more things, continues to create extra value in you. And I think back to Lisa choosing to make me the managing partner back in the day. I went from, I think at the time there's maybe 2,000, 3,000 consulting partners in Canada.
Yeah.
So I went from 1 in 3,000 to one of the guys who ran a $300 million business. Well, there's only 12 of them. And I got that because I stayed out and I just became a better consultant and I grew as a consultant. And eventually, yeah, you are the best option. So rather than think about career and progression and money, and I had no plan for this, but I think it's the summation of all the coaching points I got over the year. do whatever you can to be a really good consultant. And the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah.
Now, for some of the bigger promotions, like to an associate partner or to a partner, you do need sponsors who will pull you through the process. There's this fallacy in our myth in our industry that we earn the right to be partners. No, you're picked. You're selected, you're chosen, you're dragged through the process by the other partners, be it in a private partnership or an IBM.
Yeah.
And so as you get more and more up the ladder, mentors and coaches will help you grow your skills, work on that.
Yeah.
For some of the bigger promotions, you got to start looking for sponsors, and that's a little different.
Yeah.
Those are the people who are actually vested in you getting to the next level, and quite literally will pull you through the process.
Thank you. Just to finish off, one last question. If you could recommend one book to somebody, what would it be?
Singular book.
You can list multiple if you want.
This one is going to come down to temporalness, because it was recently I read it, and it was The Undoing Project, Michael Lewis's book about the two behavioral economists, Kahneman and Tveres. And
Daniel Kahneman, is it?
Daniel Kahneman.
Thinking
He got
Fast
the
and
Oscar
Thinking
for
Slow?
behavioral economics.
Yeah, I've read the book.
So they were two refugees after the First World War in Israel, and they were a combination of mathematicians and psychologists.
Yeah.
And they used that joint knowledge to debunk all of the linear thinking that A equals B, B equals C, therefore C equals A.
Yeah.
No, humans don't act that way. That's where the psychology kicks in, and out of that their studies comes this notion of behavioral economics, that it isn't just quants, that there's a human.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it at the time. I'm reading it because Michael Lewis writes interesting stories, and I'd heard a podcast reading about it.
Yeah.
But it reaffirms something I've come to understand, that when you start in your career and there's a focus on technical skills, learn how to code, learn how to be a project manager, learn to understand processes. You get to a point really, really quick where the deciding factor is, do you understand humans?
Yeah.
Do you understand individual motivation? Because if you're going to be the leader of a group of individuals, you better understand
how people work.
And it's not by money, and it's not by fear. It's by autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So what are you doing to create autonomy, mastery, and purpose in those people so they will be motivated to give their best selves? And because we play a team sport, you better understand how to build teams.
Yeah.
And this trope that's in our industry about forming, storming, norming, performing is nonsense. That guys like Patrick Lencioni have pointed out that effective teams have conflict. They say that when you sit in a team, we don't all groupthink and think the same thing.
Yeah. Conflict is the...
Constructive conflict is essential.
Yeah, the healthy competitiveness between differing ideas,
Right.
which leads to...
You have to have that out in a team.
Yeah.
And all of us can accept that our idea didn't win. None of us can accept being shut down. And the more I get into this industry, the last 25 years have been more focused on technical skills. Great, I got that. I can refresh. I can go from assembler code to procedural code to 4GLs to Java to done. That's not a hard part. Understanding human behavior and human motivations and team motivations becomes way more critical. And that was just reaffirmed reading Kahneman and Tveres as it ain't about math, folks, because the math goes through the heads of these wonky things called humans.
Have you read Thinking Fast and Slow?
No, I haven't.
Awesome. That's a good one as well.
I'll add that to the list.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mike.
Hey, this was fun, Carl. Thank you kindly.
Awesome. Cheers.